Welcome to Conspiracist. Today, we embark on a deep dive into one of history's most persistent and frankly intriguing hypotheses. The idea that governments, maybe even other powerful groups, have intentionally concealed evidence of lost technologies from the past. You've probably encountered this theory in various forms, right? Suggestions that advanced ancient civilizations had knowledge far beyond what conventional history tells us. And crucially, that this knowledge wasn't just forgotten, but deliberately suppressed, hidden away. Now, despite our name, our mission isn't just to chase shadows. It's to rigorously examine the evidence. We want to try and separate fact from, well, speculation, and really understand the true history of lost knowledge. Our mission today is to unpack this hypothesis thoroughly. We'll look at its origins, understand its significance, why does it capture the imagination so much? We'll trace its impact, how it's evolved over time, and explore its practical relevance, if any, to our modern world. We'll navigate through a stack of fascinating insights, extracting key knowledge, looking at different perspectives, and we'll be focusing, as always, solely on the factual content available. So what if some of these marvels from antiquity weren't just forgotten, but actively hidden? And what does that really mean for how we understand human innovation when we consider what's lost, what's rediscovered, and what just remains a complete enigma? Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. And to really start this deep dive effectively, I think it's crucial we establish a clear understanding of what we actually mean by lost technology. It's more than just something forgotten, like, an old family recipe where the details just fade. Instead, it defines a skill, maybe a complex process, or even a physical object, where the precise methods of creation or how it worked are just no longer known. Or, importantly, they're not reproducible with comparable quality. Even when we throw modern science and reverse engineering at it, this isn't about something being, say, out of style or not commercially viable anymore. It implies a genuine inability to recreate it or fully grasp its capabilities today.
That's a really key distinction, isn't it? It implies a level of complexity, maybe unique materials that aren't just out of fashion, like you said, but genuinely inaccessible now. Could you elaborate a bit on that line between truly lost and maybe just poorly understood or really difficult to recreate today? What are the practical differences?
Yeah, the line can be subtle, but it's vital. For instance, you look at some really impressive ancient achievements. They might not be technically lost, but maybe they demanded extraordinary levels of human skill that just aren't common anymore, or they needed specific environmental conditions that don't exist now, which makes trying to replicate them on a large scale incredibly costly or, well, maybe impossible. Think about the precise art of working flint knapping. It was a foundational technology for tools, for weapons, for millennia. But it's hardly practiced now with the same deep mastery.
Right, we understand the physics, maybe, but not that ingrained skill.
Exactly. The principles are known, but that deep, nuanced skill, passed down through generations, it's effectively lost in its original high-level form. Or take certain heirloom plants, like the Montreal melon, famously. We can still grow it, technically. But the whole agricultural infrastructure around it, the specific microclimate it thrived in Montreal, the really nuanced knowledge for cultivating it efficiently for mass production, that's vanished. So it's become temperamental, not really commercially viable. It's not always a secret formula. Sometimes it's about losing a whole complex ecosystem of knowledge and conditions.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. It's the whole picture.
Yep.
So when we shift to the genesis of this concealment hypothesis, this idea that some technologies were actively hidden, it often seems to spring from those archaeological puzzles, doesn't it? You find an artifact, a structure, and it just feels out of place. It seems way ahead of its time, and that's where the speculation really ignites.
Precisely. That's often the starting point. The idea that advanced ancient technologies exist, or maybe existed, frequently stems from exactly those kinds of discoveries, especially when the known historical record seems to have, gaps, or when the established scientific explanations feel insufficient to some people. And this popular fascination, this romance with hidden or lost knowledge, it really fuels the concealment hypothesis. It often suggests that conventional wisdom, or maybe the establishment, which usually means mainstream academia, might be actively suppressing alternative interpretations, or even hiding discoveries.
And this narrative gets framed as a kind of underdog story, right? Fighting the good fight against some big monolithic institution that doesn't want the truth out.
That's exactly the framing you often see. It taps into a natural skepticism of authority, perhaps. And we've seen this play out quite vividly in popular culture. Certain documentary series, for example, sometimes explicitly embrace this idea. They position themselves as outsiders, challenging conventional wisdom, sometimes quite aggressively.
Right. I know the ones you mean. And that approach hasn't gone unnoticed by the academic community.
No, definitely not. It's drawn significant criticism. Professional archaeological organizations, for instance, have publicly voiced very strong concerns. They argue that such claims, especially when popularized like that, often amount to false claims and misinformation, and that they tend to disparage archaeologists and devalue the archaeological profession itself. They emphasize that these aren't just harmless alternative histories. They can contribute to a broader erosion of trust in scientific methods and expertise.
It's sometimes called the Galileo Gambit, isn't it? Claiming persecution makes your theory seem more valid.
That's a related idea, yes. The implication that being ridiculed somehow proves you're onto something big like Galileo. But of course, it's a logical fallacy. Galileo was eventually proven right by evidence, but most theories that get dismissed, well, they're dismissed because the evidence just isn't there.
And this notion of academia being some kind of monolithic institution pushing some master narrative, experts find that idea pretty hard to swallow.
Yeah, leading experts in the field have called that notion absurd. They stress that scientific progress actually thrives on surprising finds, on provocative questions. The real core of science isn't just asking what if. It's about rigorously testing those claims, testing against empirical evidence, checking for internal consistency, using logic and argument to refine understanding over time.
So it's the lack of convincing evidence, not some grand conspiracy.
That's the argument from the scientific community. The lack of solid, testable evidence is the primary reason certain alternative theories don't gain wide acceptance. And archaeology, it's worth remembering, is highly interdisciplinary. It's constantly pulling in new data from genetics, advanced engineering analysis, botany, geology, even satellite imaging like LiDAR now. New discoveries, new interpretations. They aren't just tolerated, they're actively sought after. That's how fields advance.
And while some archaeologists do worry about hostility fueled by these theories,
yes, but many also see discussing these ideas publicly as an opportunity, a chance to educate people about the scientific method itself, to show how knowledge is actually built through evidence, through rigorous debate, peer review, not through some kind of unified, unchallengeable dogma.
Okay, so with that framework established the difference between lost and poorly understood, and the context of the concealment debate, let's get into some concrete examples. These technologies that really sit at the heart of this, ranging from methods that seem truly gone to achievements that just, well, they still puzzle us.
Absolutely. A very clear, tangible example of a functional technology that was widely known in its time but then just vanished is the penthe. You find references in ancient Greek texts, most famously in Homer's Odyssey. It's also thought to have been used in ancient Egypt, and it's described in history and mythology as that which chases away sorrow, or anti-sorrow.
Anti-sorrow sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It does, but it seems to have been real. A substance, very likely of pharmaceutical preparation of some kind, believed to alleviate grief, maybe physical pain too, potentially acting as an antidepressant or perhaps an opioid. We don't know for sure, but its exact composition, how it was made, completely unknown today, despite centuries of scholars trying to figure it out. So this represents a practical, functional technology, widely used, widely understood in its era, and then, poof, gone from the collective knowledge base.
If its loss wasn't necessarily suppression, just fading away.
That seems most likely. The fragility of oral traditions, maybe lack of detailed written records, combined with changing medical practices over time, it just disappeared.
Fascinating. A potent medicine just lost. Okay, another equally captivating case, but moving into metallurgy, is Damascus steel. This metal, used all across the Middle East during the Middle Ages, it became legendary, didn't it? For its hardness, flexibility, that incredibly sharp edge, and those distinctive wavy patterns on the surface.
Oh, absolutely legendary. Imagine a sword blade that could hold an edge like nothing else, reportedly flexible enough not to shatter, yet hard enough to cut through lesser metals. It was manufactured for a really long time, about 1,100 years, give or take, from around the 3rd century up to the mid-18th century, widely used for swords, daggers, high-quality blades. But the precise formula, how they actually made it, particularly that unique crucible process that created its superior properties, its microstructure, it's been entirely lost to time.
How does something used for over a millennium just vanish?
Well, theories usually focus on a combination of things. One is extreme secrecy. The production process was likely guarded incredibly closely, maybe by individual mastersmiths or specific guilds, a trade secret. And then there was increasing difficulty in getting the specific raw material, a unique type of high-carbon steel known as wood steel, primarily from India. that wood steel seems to have been essential for its unique properties. As
Right.
those trade routes changed or the sources dried up.
The recipe became useless without the key ingredient.
Potentially, yes. Or the knowledge just wasn't passed on effectively. Modern attempts to recreate it have had, well, varying success. You can get blades that look similar in the patterns, but replicating the original's exact metallurgical properties, still debated if anyone's truly cracked it. It's a prime example of knowledge potentially lost because it was guarded so closely. The secrecy paradoxically led to its extinction when the chain broke.
Wow. Okay, and then there's Roman concrete. We see the evidence all around us, or at least the remnants. Structures like roads, aqueducts, the Pantheon in Rome, enduring for millennia thanks to this material. What's truly astonishing is that some of it could actually harden underwater, right? That seems incredibly advanced.
It was remarkable. Its durability is just exceptional. It was typically composed of layers, stone, gravel, sand, but often using volcanic ash, specifically pozzolana, or sometimes crushed terracotta. These reactive materials were key. They reacted chemically with the lime and water to form incredibly strong, stable bonds over time, even in harsh environments like seawater.
But despite being used across this vast empire, the knowledge faded.
Largely, yes. Especially the precise knowledge for the really monumental structures, the underwater applications. It was significantly lost in medieval Europe. People in later centuries looked at these massive Roman structures still standing and literally thought it must have been magic.
Yeah.
They just couldn't comprehend how they were built or why they lasted so incredibly long.
Why did it fade? Was it documented?
That's part of the issue. A lot of this knowledge transfer seems to have been oral, learned on the job by skilled craftsmen, master builders. It wasn't always comprehensively documented in, say, textbooks or scientific manuals the way we might expect today. So during periods of major upheaval, like the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, or simply when the demand for massive, complex construction projects just stopped, that specialized knowledge, held by relatively few people, became incredibly vulnerable. It just wasn't needed or practiced, so it disappeared from common use.
But this one wasn't lost forever.
No, that's the interesting part here. Roman concrete wasn't permanently lost. Its principles, the use of pozzolans, they were meticulously studied and rediscovered, primarily in the 17th and 18th centuries. It marks it as a case of temporary, though very long, loss, and modern engineers are still studying it. Recent research suggests the use of quicklime in some mixes might give it amazing self-healing capabilities. Cracks appear, water gets in, and it triggers a chemical reaction that actually fills the cracks.
Self-healing concrete from millennia ago. That's incredible.
It's a truly revolutionary insight, potentially, that we're only now fully appreciating. A powerful reminder of ingenuity.
It really illustrates that cycle of loss and rediscovery. And knowledge loss isn't just an ancient thing, right? We see it more recently, too. Check glassworks, for instance.
Yes, that's a much more recent and quite tragic example. Before World War II, specific unique hues and colors of glass, like hyalith and agate glass from Bohemian regions, were world-renowned for their beauty and quality. But after the war, this very specialized knowledge largely vanished from the region.
Why? What happened there?
It was primarily due to the expulsion of skilled German populations from those areas after the war. This meant a sudden, devastating loss of human capital, generations of accumulated knowledge, specific techniques passed down, the artistic vision gone. Plus, the disruption of the specific manufacturing infrastructure, the workshops, the unique kilns, the supply chains for particular raw materials, it all fell apart. So it wasn't a deliberate cover-up. It was a terrible side effect of geopolitical upheaval. It shows how tied knowledge is to its social and economic context.
A stark reminder. And for a truly contemporary example, maybe something that hits closer to home for many listeners, CRTs. Cathode ray tube televisions.
Right. Most of us remember those bulky TVs before flat screens dominated everything. Now, the science behind how a CRT works, that's perfectly well known. It's documented, understood, but the actual infrastructure to mass produce them on an industrial scale, affordably, that has largely been dismantled globally.
So we know how, but we can't really do it anymore on a large scale.
Pretty much. The intricate global supply chains, the specialized manufacturing plants with their unique equipment, the highly trained workforce needed to make them efficiently, it just doesn't exist in the same way. They're becoming rare, even expensive, on the secondhand market. Not because the secret is lost, but because the capability for cost-effective mass production is gone. It highlights that lost technology isn't always a forgotten formula. Sometimes it's the sheer complexity and distributed nature of modern industry that makes something effectively irreproducible once demand collapses.
Okay, so beyond methods that are clearly lost or capabilities we can no longer mass produce, let's talk about the real head-scratchers. Ancient technologies whose full capabilities, or maybe even their origins, remain truly puzzling, almost defying our neat timelines. The Antikythera mechanism has to be top of the list.
Oh, absolutely. It blows your mind when you think about it. Discovered in a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera back in 1901, this intricate device dated to around 100 BCE. It contained over 30 complex bronze gears, all meticulously crafted and interconnected.
And it wasn't just a clock, was it? It did much more.
Far more. It was essentially the world's first known analog computer, a staggering feat of engineering for its time. Or any time before the modern era, really. It could accurately predict celestial events. The positions of the sun, the moon, all the planets known back then. It could predict lunar and solar eclipses. It even tracked the 4-year cycles of the ancient Greek games, including the Olympics.
How could they possibly achieve that level of mechanical complexity and astronomical understanding back then?
That's the million-dollar question. Its design reveals this incredibly deep understanding of astronomy, cyclical patterns, and really sophisticated gear ratios. It uses what modern engineers call differential gearing, allowing it to calculate the difference between two inputs. That's a concept not formally reinvented in the West until, like, the 16th or 17th century, maybe even later for complex applications. The sheer complexity strongly suggests it wasn't a one-off. There must have been predecessors, right? It implies a lost tradition of building similar, complex machines that because we have no other examples of.
A whole lost lineage of ancient computers, potentially.
Potentially. Its precise origin, who made it, still debated. Some theories link it to Archimedes' school of thought in Syracuse. Others point to a workshop in Corinth. But it remains this stunning computer of time, hinting at a level of technological sophistication in the ancient world that just doesn't fit the standard picture easily.
Okay, from complex gears to potential ancient electricity. Let's talk about the Baghdad battery. Discovered in the 1930s near Baghdad, it sounds simple. A clay jar, a copper cylinder inside, and an iron rod suspended in the center.
Right. Relatively simple components. But some researchers looked at this setup and hypothesized it could function as a primitive galvanic cell, a battery, if that theory is correct. Well, it would radically push back the history of electrical technology by nearly 2 millennia. The idea is you'd pour an acidic liquid inside, maybe wine, vinegar, grape juice, something readily available. This electrolyte would react with the copper and iron electrodes, generating a small but steady electric voltage, maybe 1 or 2 volts.
What would they have used such a small charge for?
That's where the debate really lies. If it was a battery, what was its purpose? Theories range from electroplating using the current to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto other objects, maybe jewelry. Other ideas include ceremonial or religious functions, maybe creating a tingling sensation for priests to awe followers, or even some kind of early electrotherapy for pain relief. But there are also strong counter-arguments. Maybe it was simply a storage vessel for sacred scrolls, with the metals protecting the parchment and the sealed top keeping them safe. Its true nature is ambiguous.
So it could be a battery, but it might just be a jar.
Essentially, yes. Its ambiguous nature definitely contributes to that sense of a hidden or misunderstood past. It fuels speculation precisely because we can't be certain. It remains an electrically charged enigma, you could say.
And speaking of enigmas, the El Toro Hills burial artifacts in Jalisco, Mexico. These sound particularly strange. 80 years of research uncovering burial sites. Artifacts made from jade, jasper, lapis lazuli, precious materials. Plates, slabs, masks, and figurines resembling aliens.
This site, or rather collection of sites, is genuinely perplexing for archaeologists. Over decades, these intermittent digs have yielded a trove of unusual items. Now, initially, there were, understandably, questions about forgeries. These things look so unusual, but the sheer volume of artifacts, the consistency and style across different sites found over many years, and the geological context some were found in, it's convinced many experts that at least a significant portion are genuinely ancient. The materials are high quality, the craftsmanship is often masterful, and their burial depth suggests real cultural or symbolic importance to the people who made them.
But the alien-like figures and unknown script, that's what grabs the headlines.
Absolutely. The small figurines, often with elongated heads, large slanted eyes, they do bear a resemblance to modern gray alien depictions. And many pieces are engraved with intricate symbols, patterns, and what appears to be a completely unknown script, nothing like other known Mesoamerican writing systems. The repeated inclusion of what some interpret as spacecraft's motifs, disks, raid objects certainly fuels the more, shall we say, wild theories involving extraterrestrials.
But what do mainstream experts think? Lost indigenous art.
Experts tend to lean towards explanations grounded in the possible cultures of the time, lost indigenous practices, perhaps unique shamanic visions represented in art, maybe highly stylized representations of humans, animals, or deities that just look alien to us now, or perhaps complex astronomical symbolism we don't understand. The lack of a clear conclusion, combined with that really striking, almost unsettling iconography, keeps them a significant archaeological puzzle. Part undeniable ancient craft, part profound mystery.
And this sense of mystery extends to some of the most iconic structures on Earth, the pyramids, especially in Egypt. Their construction methods are still debated, aren't they? The sheer scale, the precision, it's hard to fully grasp even with modern tech.
Absolutely. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza. Millions of massive stone blocks, some weighing tens of tons, moved and lifted and placed with incredible accuracy. The level of planning, resource management, labor organization, and precise geometric and astronomical alignment required, it was simply astounding for its time. And while archaeologists have developed plausible theories involving ramps, levers, skilled labor, and careful surveying, definitively explaining every aspect remains a challenge.
And this difficulty feeds into more speculative ideas, like those from Nikola Tesla.
Well, Tesla wasn't directly talking about lost ancient construction techniques in the same way. His ideas were more about a possible hidden function. He speculated, based on his own theories of electrical resonance, that ancient structures like the pyramids might have been designed for more than just tombs or monuments. He theorized they could have been designed to harness natural energy, that their shape and alignment might resonate with the Earth's electromagnetic field, essentially acting as giant energy collectors or transmitters.
Tapping into Earth's energy.
That was his speculative idea. Again, this remains far outside mainstream scientific consensus regarding the pyramid's purpose, but it contributes to that broader narrative we're discussing, the idea that ancient civilizations might have possessed advanced, perhaps fundamentally different, knowledge or technological capabilities focused on energy, on forces we don't fully understand or utilize today, a hidden purpose overlooked by modern science.
This brings us to a really critical point, I think, about how knowledge loss actually happens over time. It's not always this dramatic cloak and dagger stuff, right? Often it seems like a more natural process. Decay, social change, things just falling out of use.
Exactly. That's a crucial aspect. Societal collapse, for example, is a huge catalyst for losing knowledge on a massive scale. You look at major historical collapses, the Western Roman Empire, the classic Maya civilization, the Indus Valley or Harappan civilization. What often happens is a dramatic decline in overall societal complexity.
What does that look like in practice?
It means losing widespread literacy. Specialist craftspeople, the ones holding intricate knowledge, disappear or disperse. Long-distance trade networks, which are vital for exchanging ideas and specialized materials, break down. And the ability or even the need to maintain large-scale complex infrastructure like aqueducts, monumental buildings, sophisticated record-keeping diminishes or vanishes entirely. Knowledge, especially when it's held by just a few experts or specialized guilds, becomes incredibly vulnerable if there aren't robust systems for passing it on, like universities or stable apprenticeship programs.
So when the central authority or the patronage disappears?
The impetus and the actual means to maintain those complex systems just evaporate. As one historian put it, civilizations are often fragile, impermanent things. The fall of the Western Roman Empire is a classic case. Much of Europe saw literacy plummet, large-scale construction pretty much ceased. Complex sanitation and water systems fell into disrepair, and the underlying knowledge didn't necessarily get hidden, it just faded from practice because the society supporting it was gone.
It's sobering how quickly intricate knowledge can unravel. But knowledge can also be lost less dramatically, can't it? Simply becoming irrelevant, or maybe being replaced by something easier, even if it's not strictly better in all ways. You mentioned perverse optimization earlier.
Yes, that's a fascinating concept. Perverse optimization is when improving one aspect of something inadvertently leads to a decline or a loss in another, often more fundamental aspect. A great example comes from Japanese swords. The later swords from the peaceful Edo or Bakufu period became incredibly ornate, status symbols, meticulously crafted for display, perhaps occasional duels, works of art. But some argue that the earlier, maybe more crude-looking swords from the period of the Mongol invasions were actually superior for intense battlefield combat. They were perhaps tougher, more focused on resilience, edge retention under extreme stress, sheer cutting power against armor, rather than just sharpness or beauty. So the mastery of making a truly optimal combat blade might have actually diminished as the Smiths' focus shifted towards aesthetics and the requirements of peacetime dueling. The technology of sword-making didn't vanish, but its purpose shifted. And in optimizing for the new purpose, some critical aspects of the older battle-focused designs were effectively lost.
So progress in one direction meant losing something valuable from before.
Exactly. It shows knowledge doesn't always disappear due to catastrophe. Sometimes it just atrophies because its relevance shifts or a new, better way emerges, even if that new way sacrifices certain prior capabilities, like the loss of really masterful flint knapping once metal tools became common.
And we also just have to acknowledge the basic fragility of keeping information safe over long periods, right? Even without collapse or optimization, just entropy. Things fall apart.
Absolutely. That's a constant underlying pressure. Historical knowledge, whether it's in books, manuscripts, or encoded in artifacts, is always subject to decay, destruction, neglect. Think about libraries. Throughout history, even major institutions have had to make hard choices, culling vast numbers of records, hundreds of thousands, sometimes simply due to the costs of storage, preservation, space. Physical preservation is never guaranteed, never easy, and never cheap.
And even if something is physically preserved, it can still be effectively lost if no one reads it or understands its context anymore.
Precisely. A work can lose prominence. Its arguments, its insights can just fade from the active discourse simply because it falls out of fashion, becomes unread, or its original context is forgotten. Think of Edward Gibbon's massive history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Hugely influential in its day, a cornerstone of Enlightenment thought. Now, it's physically preserved, sure, it's a classic, but it's mainly read by specialist scholars. Its specific arguments, its narrative framework have largely been superseded by decades of further research and changing perspectives. It's not actively shaping broad understanding in the same way, so lost knowledge isn't always about bonfires or secret vaults. Often it's just this slow, natural process. Societal change, shifting priorities, resource limits, and the simple, relentless challenge of passing complex information accurately across generations. It's a constant battle against forgetting.
Okay, so natural decay, societal shifts, those are powerful forces. But there are definitely compelling historical cases where intentional secrecy was the driving factor in knowledge loss. Greek fire seems like the absolute classic example.
It really is the quintessential state secret, isn't it? This incendiary weapon used by the Byzantine Empire, mostly in naval battles, starting around the 7th century. It was devastatingly effective. Its unique, terrifying ability was that it continued burning even on water. Imagine trying to put that out on a wooden ship.
A true game changer for naval warfare back then.
Absolutely. Gave the Byzantines a significant military edge for centuries. And the exact ingredients, the method of production, how it was deployed, likely through siphons or projectors, these were closely guarded state secrets, top secret, passed down, as believed, through generations of Byzantine military engineers, maybe within just a few trusted families or a very tightly controlled imperial workshop. And its composition remains a genuine mystery to this day. We have theories mixtures involving petroleum, naphtha, sulfur, quicklime, pine resin, but no surviving Byzantine document explicitly spells out the formula.
So the secrecy worked too well.
In a way, yes. It makes it one of the clearest examples of a powerful state deliberately concealing a vital technology, which meant once that chain of transmission broke, maybe key people died, maybe records were lost in the chaos of Constantinople's fall. The knowledge was gone, completely and irrecoverably lost to the wider world. The very act of guarding the secret so fiercely ultimately ensured its total disappearance.
And it's not just states. Individuals can take secrets to the grave too, right? There's the strange case of Girolamo Segato, that 19th century Italian chemist.
Ah, yes, Segato. A fascinating and rather macabre story. He developed this unique, apparently revolutionary method for petrifying human remains, turning tissue to a stone-like hardness. But with unsettling realism. Reports say the preserved bodies retain their color, their features almost appearing alive, yet they were mineralized.
That sounds deeply unsettling. A scientific marvel, but creepy.
Definitely both. An incredible scientific and maybe artistic achievement pushing boundaries. Yeah. But before he died, Segato made the deliberate decision to destroy all his notes, all his research detailing the process.
Why would he do that?
The reasons aren't entirely clear. Some accounts suggest he was frustrated by skepticism from the scientific community. Maybe they didn't believe his claims or give him recognition. Others suggest he feared his process might be misused, maybe for nefarious purposes, or simply commercialized in a way he disliked. Or perhaps it was just sheer possessiveness over his unique creation. Whatever his motives, his unique art, his groundbreaking chemical process perished with him, gone. It's a powerful example of how secrets held tightly by individuals for whatever reason, profit, security, ego, ethics, can lead to the permanent, irrecoverable loss of potentially profound knowledge. Even from relatively recent history, it highlights how vulnerable knowledge is if it isn't shared or documented openly.
This loops us back then to the core hypothesis we started with, the idea of modern concealment. The claim that today's mainstream academia, or maybe governments, are actively suppressing alternative theories about ancient advanced civilizations, hiding the truth about lost technologies.
Yes, that's the crux of the conspiracy theory aspect. Proponents often claim that anyone who dares to challenge the standard historical timelines or offer unconventional explanations for archaeological puzzles, they get met with personal attacks, ad hominem arguments, or they face professional ostracism. Maybe their funding dries up, their work gets dismissed without fair review. They often portray themselves as those lone voices fighting the good fight against what they see as this rigid, monolithic institution academia that actively controls the narrative and suppresses inconvenient truths.
But, as we discussed earlier, the academic world pushes back hard against this portrayal.
Very hard. Leading archaeologists, historians, scholars who study misinformation, they strongly counter these claims. They argue that such assertions, especially when amplified by popular media with little fact-checking, often constitute false claims and misinformation, and that this rhetoric can genuinely disparage archaeologists and the entire scientific process, which relies on evidence and open debate, not hidden agendas.
They reject the monolithic institution idea outright.
Absolutely. They contend that the idea of academia being this unified block, pushing some master narrative that everyone on the inside agrees with, is just fundamentally absurd.
Yeah.
Scientific progress, almost by definition, thrives on anomalies, on surprising finds, on provocative questions that challenge existing models. That's how fields move forward. The emphasis always within legitimate scientific communities is on rigorous scrutiny, on checking internal consistency, on testing claims against all available evidence repeatedly.
So if a theory isn't widely accepted, it's usually because the evidence isn't strong enough, not because of suppression.
That's the position. Academics emphasize that science often does take a long time to change its consensus. Think about continental drift or aspects of evolutionary theory. They faced intense skepticism initially, but they eventually gained acceptance because the evidence became overwhelming, repeatable, and explained more phenomena than previous theories. So the lack of convincing, testable, repeatable evidence, not a conspiracy or some inherent resistance to new ideas, is almost always why certain alternative theories about, say, ancient aliens building pyramids don't get traction in the scientific community. And as we said, archaeology is incredibly interdisciplinary now. It pulls in data constantly. There's simply no incentive for legitimate researchers to hide paradigm-shifting discoveries. Finding something truly revolutionary would be career-defining, not something to suppress.
Okay, so if we set aside the idea of widespread modern governmental or academic concealment as largely unsupported by the evidence we have, what is the practical relevance then of studying these genuinely ancient technologies and thinking about how knowledge has been lost historically? Why should we, listening today, care about Nepenthe or Damascus steel or Roman concrete?
Oh, the relevance is actually profound, I think, on several levels. Firstly, just the act of studying ancient technologies forces us into a multidisciplinary mindset. You can't understand Roman concrete without archaeology, chemistry, geology, engineering. You can't analyze the Antikythera mechanism without astronomy, math, material science, history. This holistic approach, looking at how they solved problems with the resources and knowledge they had, can absolutely inspire new innovations today. Makes us reevaluate fundamental principles.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Many core concepts in modern tech have deep ancient roots. We mentioned Roman engineering principles informing modern water management and urban planning. That's a direct lineage. The concept of zero, developed in ancient India, it's not just abstract math, it's the bedrock of binary code, of all modern computing, foundational. Or look at metallurgy again, the iron pillar of Delhi in India. It stood there for over 1,600 years, remarkably resistant to corrosion despite India's climate. Studying its composition, the techniques used to forge it. It highlights an ancient understanding of iron purity, surface treatment, maybe phosphorus content, that could still offer insights for material science today as we battle infrastructure decay worldwide.
So it's about learning from their successes, their ingenuity. What about learning from their, maybe their wisdom in other areas for modern challenges?
Definitely. Take sustainability. That's a huge challenge now. Ancient Indian wisdom, for example, embedded in philosophies and texts, often fostered concepts very similar to a circular economy, a deep reverence for natural elements, earth, water, fire, air. Concepts like using and reusing resources harmoniously, viewing the Earth not just as a resource dump, but as something to be respected, cared for. These offer timeless, invaluable lessons for our modern sustainability efforts for tackling the climate crisis. It's a fundamental different relationship with the environment.
And agriculture, too. You mentioned the Montreal melon earlier, but are there broader lessons?
Yes. Traditional farming methods are being reevaluated globally. Take maslan, for instance. This practice involves intermingling different small cereal crops, like growing wheat and rye together in the same field. It's been used for over 3,000 years in various cultures. It wasn't just random planting, it acted like a natural insurance policy. If weather conditions were bad for wheat one year, the rye might still thrive, ensuring some harvest. It boosted overall yield stability, improved farmer livelihoods, and crucially, strengthened resilience to climate variability. This ancient wisdom is now being actively looked at again for modern global food security strategies, especially in unpredictable climates.
That's fascinating, using ancient diversity for modern resilience. Yep. And new technology is also changing how we even see the past, revealing things that challenge old ideas, like LIDAR in the Amazon.
Oh, the Amazon LIDAR discoveries are absolutely game-changing, truly remarkable. LIDAR technology uses laser pulses to map the ground surface, essentially seeing through dense jungle canopy that hides everything from aerial photos or satellites. And it's revealed these incredibly detailed 3D maps of vast, previously unknown ancient urban landscapes in the Amazon basin. We're talking intricate networks of structures, raised causeways, canals, agricultural earthworks, evidence of large, complex, organized societies living there long before European contact.
Which completely overturns the old image of the Amazon as mostly pristine wilderness with only small, scattered tribes.
Completely. It challenges decades of assumptions about simplistic indigenous societies there. This doesn't just dramatically expand our historical understanding, showing complexity where we didn't expect it. It could also offer profound insights into resilient, sustainable urban design. How did these societies adapt and thrive in that challenging environment for centuries? There might be lessons there for how we design our own cities today, facing climate change and resource challenges.
So discovery is ongoing. It's not a closed book.
Not at all. This continuous process, archaeological digs, finding new things, reevaluating old evidence with new theories, and especially the emergence of powerful new technologies like LIDAR. It means our understanding of the past is constantly being refined, expanded, sometimes revolutionized. It powerfully demonstrates that knowledge is continually being gained, unearthed, recontextualized. It directly challenges any notion of a static, fully known, or intentionally concealed past. The past isn't a locked vault. It's an active, dynamic field of ongoing inquiry and discovery.
So wrapping up this deep dive, exploring the hypothesis of governments or others concealing lost technologies reveals this really complex picture, doesn't it? We have historical facts, genuine mysteries that still puzzle us, intense academic debates, and underlying it all, that very human fascination with the unknown, with secrets. While direct evidence for widespread modern governmental concealment seems, based on the sources we looked at, largely unsupported, we definitely saw compelling historical examples. States like Byzantium closely guarding secrets like Greek fire, sometimes leading, paradoxically, to their eventual loss. And we explored all those multifaceted ways knowledge can simply fade away, societal collapse, natural decay becoming irrelevant, the unintended consequences of secrecy itself.
Absolutely. And what really stands out, I think, is the persistent, often astounding ingenuity of ancient civilizations. Their achievements, whether it's Roman concrete, the Antikythera mechanism, or sophisticated agricultural systems, continue to inspire awe and frankly still pose challenges to our understanding. And the continuous efforts of researchers today, using new tools like LIDAR, new analytical techniques, critical thinking, they're constantly bringing new understandings to light. They're challenging old assumptions, refining the narrative, and proving again and again that the past is far from static or fully deciphered. It's a field absolutely brimming with ongoing discovery.
It really is. Which leaves us perhaps with a final thought to consider as we reflect on how knowledge has been lost, rediscovered, sometimes maybe even deliberately hidden in the past. What responsibility do we have right now in the present? A responsibility to diligently preserve the knowledge we possess. And maybe just as importantly, a responsibility to openly, rigorously pursue new understanding, especially when it challenges our comfortable, preconceived notions about the past and ourselves. Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.